Ledger HQ, Episode 2. It's 2019. Somewhere in England, the CEO of a mid-sized energy company picks up his phone. The voice on the other end is his boss, the chief executive of the company's parent organization. He recognizes it immediately. The accent, the cadence, the way the man structures the sentence. It's absolutely him. Zero doubt. Their boss needs a favor. Urgent. Confidential. A supplier payment, $243,000, needs to go out today or the deal falls apart. The CEO processes the payment without hesitation. Then he calls his boss back to confirm it went through. His boss has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. The voice on that call had been built by a computer, trained on publicly available recordings of the actual executive, earnings calls, conference speeches, media interviews. The machine studied the man's voice, learned every detail of it, and then became it. $243,000 gone. Funds dispersed across accounts in multiple countries, never recovered. Now here's the thing. When this story broke, it made headlines for about 48 hours. Executives were briefed. Cybersecurity firms sent strongly worded emails that nobody fully read. A lot of serious nodding happened in a lot of boardrooms. Spoiler, they were not good. Everyone got very concerned for about 2 business days. Then Q3 earnings came out and the whole thing just kind of fell off the agenda, which is going to become very ironic very soon. Because that phone call in 2019 was not the crime, it was the audition, and the people behind it spent the next 5 years asking themselves one question. If a voice could do that, what could a face do? Before we get to what comes next, you need to understand what deepfakes actually are. Not the Hollywood version, the real one, because it is significantly less complicated than most people think. And that gap between what people imagine and what the technology actually requires is precisely where the danger lives. The deepfake is an AI model trained to reproduce a person's appearance and voice using existing footage of that person. You feed it material, recorded interviews, conference videos, LinkedIn posts, company webinars, YouTube uploads, and it learns to generate new footage of that person saying and doing things they never said or did. The voice side has been accessible for years. A convincing voice clone today can be built from as little as 3 seconds of audio. 3 seconds, that is 1 sentence. That is exactly how much audio your brain needs to recognize someone you know. The video side took longer to get genuinely scary. For a while, deepfake video had tells, blurry edges, eyes that did not quite track right, faces that flickered at the margins like a television on a bad signal. Good enough to put a celebrity's face on someone else in a viral clip. Not good enough to fool a finance professional sitting in a live business meeting. Those days are over. There was no moment when someone stood up and said, "Hey everyone, the fake faces now look completely real. You should probably know that." It just became true one day and the criminals found out before the rest of us did. By 2023, real-time video deepfake generation had crossed a line that nobody publicly announced. The glitches disappeared. The eyes moved the way real eyes moved. The faces held up under office lighting. The mouths matched the audio perfectly. A person with no specific reason to be suspicious would not catch it. A person who had been told to look for it would still struggle. And the people running these operations knew it before most companies did. So they started thinking bigger. A lot bigger. The answer to how big came in January 2024. Arup is not some obscure company you have never come across. Founded in London in 1946, they are one of the most respected engineering and design firms in the world. 18,000 employees, 34 offices across the globe. Their portfolio includes the Sydney Opera House, the Etihad Stadium, and they are currently working on completing the structure of the La Sagrada Familia in Spain, a building that has been under construction for over 140 years. These are the people who solve problems for breakfast that would make most of us cry. They look at a building designed to look like it's actively melting and go, "Yeah, we can structurally support that. Give us a week." 18,000 employees, nearly 8 years in business, projects on every continent, and the thing that finally took them down was the same app your aunt uses to talk to her book club. And that was not a knock on Arup or the people involved. That just goes to show how good this technology has gotten, because what happened next could have happened to almost anyone. In 2024, a finance employee at Arup's Hong Kong office received an email. It appeared to come from the company's CFO based in UK. The message was asking for help with a confidential transaction. Multiple wire transfers. Urgent. Keep it between us for now. The employee was immediately suspicious. This had all the hallmarks of a phishing attempt. Exactly the kind of thing the IT department had been warning people about for years. He almost did not engage with it at all. Then he got the meeting invite. A video call. The CFO wanted to go over it face to face. And when the employee joined that call, there was the CFO, right there on screen. Clear picture, good audio. And there were other colleagues too. People he recognized, people he had worked alongside, people who looked completely right and sounded completely right, and responded to each other in real time like actual human beings sitting in an actual meeting. Every single person on that call was computer-generated fiction. The criminals had spent months harvesting publicly available footage of Airup's executives, company videos, conference recordings, webinars, press appearances. They fed all of it into AI systems that rebuilt each person from scratch. And then they ran a live multi-person fake video conference with AI-generated participants who could speak, respond, nod, and interact as though the whole thing were completely real. The employee's suspicion from the phishing email evaporated completely. He was looking at his colleagues. He was hearing their voices. He watched them interact naturally with each other. His brain did what human brains are designed to do when they see a familiar face and hear a familiar voice. It said, "Okay, we're fine. This is real." Hours of training and endless warning, completely cooked by a free app on a random Tuesday afternoon. He processed the transfers. 15 transactions, 5 different Hong Kong bank accounts, 200 million Hong Kong dollars, 25.6 million US dollars in a single day. The fraud was discovered a week later when the employee contacted Airup's head office to follow up on the deal. Nobody knew what he was talking about. The CFO had never scheduled that call. The colleagues had never been in that meeting. The entire room had been a fabrication and the money was already dispersed and gone. No arrests have been made. The funds have not been recovered to this day. Airup's chief information officer later gave an interview about the incident. He said, and I want you to sit with this quote for a second, "This happens more frequently than people realize." He was not exaggerating. After the Hong Kong story became public, the corporate world woke up a little. Cybersecurity briefings went out across industries. HR teams ran training sessions. The guidance was remarkably consistent everywhere you looked. If you receive an unusual payment request, verify it through a completely separate channel. Call the person directly on a known number. Do not just reply to the email chain. And if you are ever uncertain about who you are actually speaking with, do one thing above everything else. Request a video call to confirm. I want you to hold on to that piece of advice, because this next part is where the story goes from scary to genuinely jaw-dropping. March 2025, Singapore. A finance director at a multinational firm receives a message from someone claiming to be the company's CFO. Urgent wire transfer, confidential acquisition deal, has to move today. She had been briefed. She knew about deepfake fraud. She had sat through the training sessions, so she did exactly what every cybersecurity expert in the world had been telling people to do. She asked for a video call to verify. The criminal said yes without hesitating. They knew the companies had started warning employees. They knew the standard advice was circulating widely, so they had built the verification step directly into the attack itself. In some documented cases, they're offering the video call themselves before the victim even asked, because they understood that seeing a human face on a live video call had become the gold standard of trust verification in the modern business world. And they had a library of those faces ready to deploy. The finance director got on the call. She saw exactly who she expected to see, heard exactly what she expected to hear, and authorized the transfer. $499,000 gone. The thing the entire security industry had told her would protect her was the thing that took her down. Think about what that actually means. They did not break the security system. They did not find a vulnerability in the software or crack a password or exploit a technical weakness. They studied the defense, understood it completely, and then used it as the attack. That is a level of adaptability that should make every organization in the world deeply uncomfortable. And it gets worse, because this was not an isolated case. This was a pattern. Also in early 2025, a coordinated wave of deepfake attacks targeted some of Italy's most prominent business figures. Criminals posed as the Italian defense minister and contacted executives from major corporations, including people connected to the fashion house of Giorgio Armani. They claimed to need urgent help freeing journalists who had been detained in the Middle East. The story was detailed, emotionally compelling, and completely fabricated. At least one executive transferred €1 million to a Hong Kong account after being told they would be reimbursed by the Bank of Italy. The Bank of Italy was not involved. No journalists were detained. The executive lost €1 million in a single conversation. Different country, different industry, different story, same playbook. Let's step back from the individual stories now and look at what this actually looks like from 30,000 feet. Because these incidents are not anomalies. They are not outliers. They are data points in something that is growing faster than almost any fraud category in recorded history. In 2025 alone, deepfake fraud caused $1.65 billion in documented global losses. The FBI logged over 22,000 AI fraud complaints last year, with total losses exceeding $893 million in the United States alone. Those numbers are almost certainly a significant undercount. Congressional researchers estimate that fewer than 5% of deepfake fraud victims ever report what happened to them. Companies go quiet because the story is humiliating. Investors get nervous the moment they hear it. Reputations take damage that no press release can fully repair. So the vast majority of incidents never make it to any official report. Multiply the official figures by 20 and you're closer to what is actually happening. 400 companies are being targeted every single day right now. Not every week, not every month, every single day. Deepfake attacks against businesses surged 1,600% in just the first quarter of 2025 compared to the quarter before it. The number of individual deepfakes created globally went up from about 500,000 in 2023 to over 8 million in 2025. That's not incremental growth. That is an explosion. By 2027, Deloitte projects AI-enabled fraud will cost $40 billion annually. $40 billion. To put that in context, the entire global film industry generates around $90 billion a year. So we're talking about a criminal enterprise that within 2 years will be generating revenues equivalent to nearly half of Hollywood. Except it costs almost nothing to run and carries a fraction of the risk because most victims will never report it. And here's the part that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. The technology costs nothing. A convincing voice clone requires 3 seconds of audio and an app anyone can download in about 4 minutes. The video tools are available to anyone with a laptop and the patience to watch a few tutorials. You do not need a criminal organization behind you. You do not need technical expertise or funding or infrastructure. You need a publicly available footage of your target, a free tool to process it, and a company that schedules meetings on Zoom. That is it. That is the complete list of requirements to commit multi-million-dollar fraud in 2025. Meanwhile, somewhere there is a guy doing 5 to 10 for knocking over a gas station for $400. The justice system is really going to need a minute on this one. What happens now? So where does this leave us? What do you actually do with this information? The security industry has started catching up, slowly. Some companies have introduced verbal code words, a pre-agreed phrase that only the real person would know, used to verify identity before any financial transaction is authorized. Others have implemented strict out-of-band confirmation policies, meaning that any request involving money must be verified through a company-separate communication channel that was not used to make the original request. Some organizations have gone further and banned wire transfer authorizations via video call entirely regardless of who appears to be on the screen. These are not bad solutions. They help, but they are also reactive, built in response to attacks that have already happened rather than anticipating what comes next. And what comes next is the part that experts are genuinely worried about. The technology is not standing still. It is improving every month. The gap between what a deepfake looks like today and what a real person looks like is narrowing. The cost of generating one is dropping. The time required is shrinking. The tools are becoming more accessible and more polished with every software update. The 2019 voice clone that stole $243,000 was built with technology that now looks primitive. The 2024 Zoom call that stole $25.6 million was built with technology that will look primitive in another 4 years. We are not at the end of the story. We are somewhere in the middle of the first chapter. The FBI, the SEC, and cybersecurity firms across the world are all saying versions of the same thing. The companies that survive this era will be the ones that build verification systems that do not rely on human perception, because human perception, as we have now seen in extraordinary detail, can be fooled. Not because the people involved were careless or naive, but because the technology has been deliberately engineered to exploit the exact mechanisms we use to trust each other. That is not solving problem with training session. That is a fundamental challenge. For years, human beings have relied on one thing above everything else to decide whether to trust someone: a face. Not a contract, not a password, not a signature on a document. A face. The presence of another person, their eyes, their voice, the specific way they carry themselves on a screen. That instinct is not learned. It is wired into us at a level no amount of corporate training can fully override, because it predates corporations by thousands of years. The Air Group employee was not reckless. He was not foolish. He was a finance professional doing his job the way he had always done it. He looked at the CFO's face, heard the CFO's voice, watched his colleagues respond and interact naturally, and every signal his brain had been calibrated over a lifetime to trust told him the same thing. This is real. These are your people. You are safe. He was wrong, and it cost $25.6 million to find out. No network was breached, no credentials were stolen, no firewall was bypassed, no alarm went off. The criminals walked in through the front door, wore the faces of the people he had worked with and trusted, sat across from him in what looked like a perfectly ordinary meeting, and walked out with the money while he was still saying goodbye at the end of the call. The thing that made us human, the ability to recognize each other, to trust a face, to feel safe in the presence of someone we know, is exactly what is being used against us. The money being stolen is real. The faces taking it are not.